Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to season two of Conversations in Pop Culture, where I have with me Cosplayer Stormborn. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, I am very excited to have you on. Obviously, we're at the start of season two, and I like to highlight new and upcoming cosplayers. And there's a bunch of cosplays that I want to talk about, but I am very curious how you initially got into cosplay because you are relatively new still.
Yeah. So, I got into cosplay. I kind of like dabbled with it a little bit in high school. So I was part of an anime club, as I'm sure a lot of people were. But so I think that was maybe I think my first convention that I went to was like Anime Boston, and it was in like 2013. And I didn't cosplay or anything. I was just there, and we all had our anime club t-shirts on. So we all had little drawings of ourselves on the t-shirt in different areas, and we were all in green t-shirts so that way our chaperone could like look for us. And so we're all 14 and 15-year-olds just running around a convention with, minimal supervision, and we're just watching everyone, and there were all these cosplayers, and I was just like, wow, this is just so cool. This is something I really want to be a part of. Like, how do I do it? And I didn't really have any money and I didn't really know how to do anything or make any costumes or anything. So I just started to kind of like research things on YouTube and just kind of start looking, I don't know, at where to start. And I feel like my first cosplay was probably 2014, but nobody really saw it. It was just like I brought it to the convention the next year, and I think it was Miyuki Basquas. I don't know if anybody's ever know where she's from, or she's from this anime called Basquas where they have like these like large fighting mech animes. It was like, yeah, it was like just a little anime, but I feel like she looked like me, so I wanted to cosplay her. And I mean, like, I honestly, I don't even know if I have a picture of that cosplay. It's so old, but that was technically my first cosplay in like 2015.
And so, to even go off of that one, what was that like even creating it and putting it together, and what was the inspiration behind that one and the first one and your, I guess, amateur first one, we're going to call
Yeah.
it, for all intents and purposes. So, like, what was the entire process of building it and creating it and putting it
hmm
together and all that stuff like?
Well, that first one was definitely pretty rough. I mean, I just created that. I was like in my basement, didn't have many materials to work with, was only working like a little part-time job and like mostly still focusing on like school and applying for colleges and all that stuff. So I didn't really have that much time to dedicate it. So it actually became the day before Anime Boston. I think this must have been like 2015 or 2014. And I didn't have anything done yet. I had bought all the materials, made my mom take me to Michael's, all of this stuff. I bought all the stuff. I had to tie dye some fabric and all this other stuff, and I had none of it done. So I started the night before and stayed up all night. And I was like hot gluing parts of fabric together. She had her hair in pigtails, but at the time my hair was kind of shorter, so I was like trying to make sure I put my hair up. She had these like pants that I think also had different designs on it, so I was like taping stuff to the side to make the designs. It was shoddy workmanship, if I have to be quite honest, but it was cute. It was my first time wearing colored contacts, so I was like scared to touch my eye, and it took me an hour to put in the colored contacts, and I was just like, I don't want to touch my eye. But it was shoddy. It was, a mess, but it was still kind of cute. And then when I went to my first convention, people were like taking pictures of me, and I was like, I'm so cool now. Like, I'd never had that before, so I felt like I was really cool, even though it was really, looking back, it was such a poorly made costume.
And so, what was that like though? Because obviously, this is your first one, and people are responding very well to it, and people are taking pictures. And Anime Boston is a unique entity collectively. It was actually my first panel that I ever done up in Anime Boston. I think in 2012 of all times, but I digress. And so, Anime Boston though is a very big con,
Yeah.
and it does attract over 20,000 people. And so, what was that entire environment like for you? Because obviously, it's a big stage.
hmm I feel like it was a little bit overwhelming too, especially because a lot of people didn't really know what character I was cosplaying as because it was more an obscure, like kind of anime. So I think people were more so just like oh, look at this little girl. She looks like she tried and she looks like she was doing a good job. So let me take this picture of her. But I don't think anybody really knew who I was or what I was doing. But I think it was very overwhelming because I had like, a lot of like people asking me questions and about the fandom and then asking me questions like that. And I was like, wait, I wasn't prepared to do all of this and answer all of these questions. So I think I was kind of taken aback. I was just like, oh, I don't know what to do now. I mean, like, yeah, you should watch this anime. It's about bots and stuff, and like they like jump around and stuff. Like none of my answers made any sense. None of them were eloquent. They were just kind of like, oh, I'm here in cosplay, you know, just trying to take it all in, I guess.
And now to even go beyond Anime Boston in this
Mm-hmm.
first one, because obviously this was your first cosplay, and you've done a bunch of other ones that I want to talk about. And we're going to go down the Disney hole in a minute here. But I am curious, and I do like to talk inside baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am curious, and I ask every cosplayer this: where do your ideas come from for your cosplays? And
Mm-hmm.
I've given everybody a little bit of a taste because there's a bunch of Disney stuff we're about to talk about.
Yeah.
But I am curious about where your ideas come from and what inspires you, and even the entire creation process for you in
Mm-hmm.
building out a cosplay. Because every cosplayer has a different way they do things, and I'm just curious how you build out yours.
Yeah, so I feel like I've always really liked to adapt characters to fit me. And so I've always, I really like gender bending cosplays. I really like to do a female version of a male character. And the reason is not because like I don't think I could do the male characters. I feel like I could, but I just feel like making it a female character makes it a lot easier for me to play the role or cosplay it. So I mean like the costume is a part of it, but I feel like for me and the way I interact with people in conventions, it would be strange to do that in a male character when I'm just so kind of like I don't know, I feel like my gestures are kind of, oriented to be more female and all of that stuff. So I kind of just want to, take costumes and just make it more female. So I've done that with almost everything. I've gender bend everything. If it's an animal, male character, doesn't matter. I'm going to make it a humanoid version that's now a female. And everyone seems to, I feel like, respond to it pretty well when I've done that. So I'm just like, I'm just going to keep it up because I like doing this. Doesn't seem to offend anybody. So I'm just like, I'm gonna keep on that trend. And I feel like cosplay is all about just like what makes you happy. So it doesn't really matter if someone doesn't really understand what you're doing, just if you're happy about it and you're enjoying it and you are going around the convention having a good time. And I just like also really movable and like breathable fabrics and like costumes. So sometimes I feel like I just gotta strip off half the layers so I can just run around freely. Like I couldn't be bogged down with really heavy costumes.
Yeah, and that's kind of a new thing in cosplay that I've noticed in the last probably 18 months is that there is a shift now from having this idea of being fully clothed, and I know exactly how that sounds.
Yeah.
And as soon as it came out of my mouth, I realized how bad that sounds. But there is this idea of having more flexibility in
Hmm.
cosplay and not it being tight and not it being, not letting you sit down. And so I've
Hmm.
noticed that's a big thing, and so obviously, I think that's very much incorporated in the way you design your cosplays. And I think even 5 years ago, that wasn't a factor in
Not really.
cosplay.
Yeah.
And that's newer. That's definitely a new trend. And I am not by any stretch of the imagination a cosplay expert, but I've noticed that tremendously. And so that kind of leads me into my next question where finding materials, because that seems to be one of the biggest challenges for cosplayers out there due to a finding the materials, prices,
Hmm.
working on certain materials because certain materials are harder to work with than others. Obviously, COVID has affected it globally. I was speaking to people from Australia, from the UK. It's very different there. And
Hmm.
so, how do you balance all of that? Because that's a challenge for every cosplayer, whether you're just
Yeah.
starting out or you're brand new or you're somewhere in between.
Yeah, I feel like it's a lot about repurposing things. Like for me, I've always started with like a really small budget. Like back, because I started a little bit in high school and that's when I was dabbling with it. So I had a lot less work to work with, and like it wasn't really fluid. And then I mean, even now I find, even though now I have like a bigger budget, I guess, to work with cosplay, I still will find ways to make deals and like, have things be more affordable. So it's always about like repurposing something. So like if you have a skirt, you haven't worn that skirt in a while. Well, what do you think about cutting it up and using it for scraps for fabric? Or what do you think about if you bought these leggings and, a character only needs like a belt added to it, like you use those leggings and you repurpose a belt around it. So I feel like a lot of times I would do that. I would go to thrift shops, I would go to like, Walmart or anything like that, and I would pick up some fabric or stuff, or I'd pick up a sweatshirt or anything like that, and then I would repurpose it, and I'd like literally just take scissors to it in my room, hot glue things to it. I have a Scar cosplay that I did, which it doesn't look like that it's anything that's repurposed, but the bottom that I made, it kind of looks like a tribal-ish type of skirt. It's actually a sweater tied together with then another piece of cloth over it, and then I like painted some sort of intricate details and patterning in the middle of it. So it kind of looked like it was supposed to be something way more intricate that I sewed together, but I really did not. I kind of just placed it together. And as the years have gone by, I feel like I found it a little bit easier to hide my shoddy workmanship. But I mean, either way, it's just kind of just like using the materials you have and then just going off of that. Like you don't have to buy the most expensive things. I think the only time that I've actually bought anything that was for cosplay, purposes, was Warbler. Everybody was really into Warbler back into like, what was that, 2018 ish, 2017? I guess everybody was into Warbler, making armored builds and stuff like that. So I would do a little bit of that. But then, like you were saying before, it became a little bit restrictive. I can only sit this way. I can't eat this way. So it was, yeah, it was a bit, hard to work with Warbler and things like that. Or for people who don't know what Warbler is, it's a thermoplastic that you heat it up and then it makes it moldable so you can make armor. But once it's folded around and molded, it's very hard to maneuver with it on, I would say. So that's when you see anybody have a really nice armor build, they probably either made it out of EVA foam or Warbler. Yeah.
And since you mentioned Scar, and we're going down the Disney position anyway, let's talk about Scar because obviously it's a gender bend.
Mm-hmm.
It's a humanoid bend as well in many ways. And so, what was the inspiration for doing Scar for starters? Because I think that's the best one to start with.
Yeah, no, I actually really, I feel at that point I had kind of been on a kick with like Disney stuff. Like I had done a Princess Tiana, but a battle version of her. And then I was just thinking, I was like, well, I really like cosplaying Disney. I really like Disney, but let's try to make it me. And I think I had just turned maybe 19 or something like that. So I'm like, oh, I'm grown now. I'm gonna do like this humanoid, like it's mysterious, it's more sexy. Like I'm gonna do that cosplay because I'm grown now. Even though I was like only 19. But I was just like, wow, this is like the costume that I want to like debut at like KatsuCon. So I'm from Connecticut, but I had moved to the DMV area for college. So this was my first KatsuCon. So, and for people who don't know about KatsuCon, that's when, all of the big cosplayers come out. They debut all of their best costumes. There's a lot of photographers around. It's kind of like a big deal for cosplayers. So I wanted to make sure that I had like a costume that was really cool, really intricate, really interesting. And then I was just like, I'd been watching The Lion King and I was just like, I want to do Scar. Like everyone's like, oh, do Nala, do this, like this. And I was like, no, I want to be Scar. And I got my contacts. I like took this like bralette-ish type of thing, and I just put fur all over it. Like I literally furred it up and I made this neck piece. I put fangs on. I had a staff too that I put fur all around it. And then it looked good, but I was like, what would make this even better? A headpiece. So there's actually two versions of my scarf cosplay. The first one, which just had little ears, which was cute, but it wasn't as regal as I wanted it to be. And then I think a year and a half later, I actually added that crown to go to KatsuCon with it. And then that was just, I think that's what made it. It was sort of just like I was taller, I stood taller, and I looked just a lot more, I guess you could say, ferocious in my mind.
So let's talk about that
Yeah.
because obviously there is an element of sexiness to this scar. You know, you can tell it's scar. You can also tell that it's not scar at the same time, which is
Hmm.
nice because it just by itself looks awesome without any context. And I think that that's cool on a cosplay level as well. And then we're talking about Disney, and we're sort of everybody knows Disney at the same time, and you have all these little components into it. So, what was that like reception like, and even
Hmm.
building it and really debuting it at Katsucon? Because I
Yes.
don't think there's been anything like this up to this point. I did my homework, I did a quick Instagram search, and what I mean by quick is like 5 minutes, and I didn't see anything remotely like this.
Yeah.
It's kind of very cool to do something like this, but it's not overly sexy either, where it's not crossing a line. It's just right at the border, which is nice.
Hmm. So I kind of try to think. So I always, whenever I gender bend something, I go straight to looking at fan art because people draw things. They'll draw humanoid versions, and they'll do that all the time. So I actually think I found a picture of Scar where it's like his hair was sort of like voluminous, and it was like down, and he was shirtless with just like a little tribalish type skirt on. And so I took that, the skirt idea, but I kind of made it my own, added more tribal prints and everything like that. And then I think I actually also looked up specific African patterns to sort of try to implement that into the cosplay as well. But then I was just like, oh, obviously I'm not going to be shirtless. I'm not going to run around Katsucon shirtless. So I was like, what can I do to make this a female version? And then I was just like, this fur bralette obviously needs to be a thing. And then I was just like working on finding the necklace, finding everything to do with my face and my makeup to try to make it, translate like this is Scar. So I find when you do humanoid or female versions, there's always something you need that's like the token piece. And for that is the huge scar on the face. So that way, if someone's thinking like, oh, is she Nala? Is she Simba? But then you see the huge scar on the face and you're like, I get it. And it's like sometimes people would have to look at me and they'd be like, oh, I get it. Oh my gosh, you're Scar. And I actually met two really good friends that same year at Katsucon. One was doing Simba. She was doing a humanoid gender bend Simba, and then her friend was doing a male version of Nala, humanoid version. And then we all got together and we were going around the con in a little group. And it's not like we planned this, we didn't make this. It was like three like-minded individuals love gender bending, and we just came together like that. And to the day we're still friends. We've done cosplays together since then. Just last year we were at BlurredCon and we did a Jet Set Radio cosplay, which was, I didn't even really know what Jet Set Radio was before that, but apparently that was like a really big deal too. So yeah, I don't know. I just felt like at Katsucon I found other people who were really interested in what I was doing too, and because I had like the token scar and stuff like that, it was easy for them to sort of figure out who I was.
Yeah, and to just continue with the Lion King, because why not? You also did Nala, and you have that version, and that's different than the Scar, where I
Mm-hmm.
don't feel as it's not as sexy. It's almost more. I don't want to say PG, but obviously she's got a dress, and it's got more of the ears, and it's almost more in Nyla's character completely.
Yeah.
And so, what
So
was that entire build like? Because that's very different, and I think that people don't understand that it does take a different set of skills to
mhm.
go down this road and go approach a cosplay in a more, I guess, not more not sexy way. If that makes any sense. Like I'm obviously not picking the right word here, but I think we all know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, so I feel like Nala, she's always seemed to be more of a like refined character in my mind, like almost kind of prim and proper. If I'm like, saying that correctly, I don't want to, you know, try to say that's all she is, obviously very fierce too, but I feel like she has more of that air to her. So that cosplay was actually a ballerina cosplay. It was a Nala ballet version, because my other friend, she did like a Pocahontas ballet version. And we didn't really have a we didn't have a whole group, but it was just the two of us. And, you know, I felt like there was something about the simple, like, elegance of it that just made it translate so much differently. And I feel like also when you're doing a cosplay, it just sort of like how you pose in the picture and how you do things in the picture also really sells it a different way. So, you know, with Scar, it's all like, "Rawr," and, you know, just being like that sexy, mysterious, but also villainous kind of role. And then with Nala, it's very much just like royalty and just, you know, prim and proper and sort of just like, I think even in the picture, I'm like doing this or something like that. Like, I feel like also when you're taking pictures and you're in the process of cosplaying, that also translate to how the cosplay is like received. So that was a really fun one for me too, because up until that point, I had not cosplayed for several months to a year, you know? So I've been like, I do my little stints sometimes, especially while I was in college. I would get like super busy. I would be studying a lot. I wouldn't really have time to dedicate to costumes. And then Katsucon would come around and I'd be like, oh, time to cosplay again.
And I don't know if it was with the Scar or if it was Nala, and it might have been with both, but obviously, and you mentioned that somebody put it up that, you know, does a cosplaying group qualify as a pride? And I think it's a great question in many ways, a pride of cosplayers. And
Yeah.
so I'm just going to throw that out to who put that up, you know, Terry McIvor. But my question off of that is that I think you worked with somebody and were in a group with Nyla as well as with Scar. And so
Mm-hmm.
what was the reception even when you group up and at Katsucon and other cons and how people react? Because cosplay groups are very fascinating because
Mm-hmm.
people love seeing characters together and
Yeah,
they really
people
love it.
love to see a group. And the most, like, I feel like um, the more people you have in a group, basically the most praise you get. So I feel like I've, you know, I've had times where I've had bigger groups, usually two to three. I remember even before I did any Disney characters, I did a Michonne cosplay from The Walking Dead, and everybody thought I looked like Michonne. And you can't really see my hair fully, but I have dreadlocks, and like they were like down to here. This is still in my early cosplay days. This is like maybe my second cosplay, and I put a Michonne costume on, and everyone was just like, "Oh my gosh, it's Michonne!" But like The Walking Dead was so big then that there were other people walking around in Walking Dead costumes. And then all of a sudden, we just kind of started walking together, you know, because they're like, hey, you know, can I get a picture of you with Daryl? Can I get a picture of you with Glenn? Like, let me get a picture of all of these people together. So, when I would start at the convention, I feel like a lot of my groups would form organically like that. Like, all of a sudden, I'm in this costume. I came to this convention with my friends who are cosplaying something completely different. But now we're gonna have friends. We're gonna be friends with these other people. And we're gonna walk around with them together because now we're a group. You know, we're in the same genre. We're wearing the same costume. Like we need to be together. And I feel like that's the great thing about conventions because I feel like so many people are just so open about doing things like that. It's not like they have like a regimented schedule and they can't do anything outside of their schedule. They're like, no, we're in the same fandom. Like, let's walk around together and let's take pictures. And I love that.
That's awesome, man. And I love cosplay groups, and I love when you have characters together and all that fun stuff. And sticking with Disney, and I definitely want to back out of The Lion King because we could spend at least another hour talking about it. And
Probably.
maybe not one and a half. We might skip that component, but I digress right there. And I do want to stick with more Disney because
Hmm.
I do want to talk about The Incredibles and
Oh, yes.
Frozone.
Master Frozone cosplay.
And let's talk about it because this character is fun. I love Frozone. I think Frozone is great. Definitely Captain Cold reference in case anybody didn't get that from DC. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
And I just think it's fun. You know, you got the white hat, the glasses, the suit. But what I like is that there's some little sexy elements to it. You know, it's not a full suit like he has. You know, showing a little skin right there, and you get the gloves, and there's a little more fun to this. And I just love this character, and obviously people love The Incredibles.
Hmm.
People were waiting forever for Incredibles 2 to come
Oh,
out,
yeah.
and so that was great. And I saw that with my friends, and We were probably the oldest people in the entire theater when it came out, but I digress again. And so, what was that build like and building that one
Mhm.
out? Because obviously, people love that entire series as well.
Yeah, so I was definitely still just going on my Disney kick, and I was just like, let's keep it up. So, Frozen, I feel like sometimes these costumes they kind of just, I'm like looking at the character, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to build this whole suit because I don't want to really be suited up like that. Like, I understand. And I had actually already seen a gender bend version where she had the whole suit on and she looked gorgeous. Like, it was so good. But I felt like that wasn't necessarily me, but I felt like, how can I make this me? So I went on a search, I'm like, well, I obviously need to get those visor glasses first because that is something that's going to be a telltale sign of what you are. And then I was just like, I actually also had white heel go-go boots too. So like I've got heels and they're go-go boots. And it's just like, but it also works as being the beginning of a suit because up to a certain level, it's like there's that white part at the bottom of the suit. And then I'm just like, okay, I had on blue leggings, so I'm just like, this is part of the suit, but I want to kind of show the midriff and then make a top version of it. So then I had also, it's sort of like a matching set. And then I was just like, well, we're going to put like, some felt, or I believe felt is what I used, like some felt design to make the top of the suit. And then I was just like, but that's not enough of the white, just trying to pull it all together because he's got that white hood, right? So I'm like, let me put on a hat. Let me put on a beanie because I want my black wig. I want the long hair. I want that to be a part of it. But I'm just like, I still want to bring in elements from the original design. So I didn't expect that one to be, you know, I guess as popular as it was. I kind of just expected to be like, this is kind of just, it seems kind of trolly, kind of jokey to me. Like I just want to go around and ask people, where's my super suit? Like, I just want to joke around and stuff like that. And I feel like that is exactly what happened. We did that yelling through Katsucon the whole time. And every time someone would be like in a corner and they'd be like, where's my super suit? Every single time. And that was just such a fun character. That was just such a fun time. And I will say, though, visibility with those shades is very low. I could not see much. I definitely had friends kind of guiding me around because I was just like, I don't know where I'm going.
So something interesting that you just brought up, and I think this is super interesting and relevant as well, that certain characters seem to allow you to do certain things and others don't. Where you can do something with Frozone that you can't necessarily do with a Michonne per se. Like
Mhm.
Michonne is not gonna, yeah, where's my super suit?
No.
Scar is not gonna be the same level of energy and tonality than Frozo is, and it's partially
Yeah.
because good guys, bad guys,
Hmm.
anti-heroes, and as well as certain just cosplays and certain characters just lend themselves to other things and allow for certain personalities to come out.
Hmm.
And so, what is that like for you when you're building and you have a certain cosplay on? Because
Yeah.
obviously you're going to conduct yourself differently depending on what you're wearing. Also, what day you're wearing it can also be a big thing because there's different energies at cons.
Yeah.
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday are all different levels of energy. And if you go on a Thursday, also, it's a very different energy on certain big ones. So, how does that all factor in?
Yeah. I definitely try to plan out my weekends for cons with the costumes based off of that energy level. Like, I always want to put my most exciting sort of biggest cosplay and like biggest personality usually on Saturday, like by far, because Saturdays, Saturday either AM to PM, because sometimes you do split it up between the AM and the PM is a different costume. But I definitely do try to put all my, bigger costumes and like bigger personality costumes on Saturday AM. Friday is usually more of like a chill day. So I feel like my favorite go to costume would have been like Michonne on a Friday because I wouldn't really talk to anybody yet. I would kind of just be, deadpan, walking around the con, just scoping everything out. But it's just chill Michonne, and you wouldn't really have to smile in pictures or anything like that. You're just, you're warming up. That's a good warm up cosplay. And then I would go into, I don't know if you've seen my gender bend Dr. Facilier, but
We
I
talk about
would,
that. The next question.
yeah. So I would do that on the Saturday because, it takes a lot of energy to be that type of villain and tricks up your sleeve and sort of just, walking around like that would take like a lot more energy. So I would do that on a Saturday. And I mean, I think I would also time it out based on how much I would think I was going to have to stop for pictures. So if I think a costume is going to be like one that's going to be pretty big with a lot more pictures, that's definitely going to be a Saturday costume because there's just not enough time in a short amount of time on a Friday, especially if you want to go to a panel or if you want to do something like that, to be stopped almost every like 5 minutes. So I feel like you want to do that on a Saturday. And then Sunday is just chill. Like I actually did Frozone on Sunday, which is sort of just like comical, running around, being fun, and just, not really worrying about sort of being like a real technical cosplayer, just kind of wanting to have fun. So it definitely does depend on the day what you want to wear.
So now you mentioned it already. We're just going to dive right into it. So Dr. Facility. Yeah, I can't even speak. Wow.
Facilier.
Princess and the Frog. Let's go with that right there.
Yes.
So let me just explain. So you obviously took a very sexy approach. It's a nice approach. There's a lot of work that went into this. You got the hat, the mask, you got a frog prop. Also, it's slightly revealing another one of those. You got the jacket, and then
Yeah.
you got the cane and everything else that's in there. A lot of intricate pieces. So, what was this build like? Because it's clearly a mixture of everything, and there's workmanship put into it just by
Yes.
looking at it. And if you go on Instagram and you find it, and I'm sure you can tell everybody what your Instagram is in a minute here or towards the back end of this, but you can tell when you see it that there is workmanship put into it, and there's effort put into it, and there's thought put into this. So, what was the build, and what was the inspiration for it?
That was definitely probably one of like my favorite cosplays. Like I did that for a while, and I do tend to sort of like, everyone retires cosplays after a while because they kind of get just tired of wearing them and they want to do something else. But I definitely did love that costume for its entire lifespan. Like it was a lot, so I had to sort of tailor a lot of things to me. Like the jacket, I actually bought, but it was way too big. It was just like not really flattering to me. So I had to kind of find ways to cinch things in, to cut things a little bit, to sort of tailor it to myself. So I tailored the jacket. And then those shorts, those ruffle shorts, I was scouring online looking for some shorts. I was just like, I need something that sort of screams like, okay, like this is like, mysterious type of thing, but I'm just like, I also want it to be cute. And I was like, ruffle shorts are just, it's like kind of, I wanted to go more Victorian with it a little bit, if that's the correct word I'm using. So I'm just like, oh, these ruffle shorts, like this is what I need, but I need them in purple. So it was like it was quite a time finding those. I had, yes, a staple, bralette. I love my bralettes, put them in every costume. Staple bralette, but I had to make sure it fit in that hole where I had to have like the little hole fitting right into the jacket, which was like, cosplayers do this. They wear push-up things. Like everything is like sitting high up at attention. Like that's just something we do. Um, and the hat, I made the hat actually from scratch. That is EVA foam. That is regular smaller pieces of foam. That's felt. That's ribbon. There's a feather in there. Like I made that hat from scratch because I saw top hats. None of them are tall enough. None of them are high enough. None of them really looked well. And then I went to Michael's, found a little bird cage, which I actually still have that bird cage. And I put my little frog in it because I was walking around with him, like this costume called for props. Like I needed the cane. Like Dr. Facilier has so many tricks up his sleeve that he needed all of the tricks, I actually also had cards which I made, like I laminated them, I painted them, I made his mysterious like voodoo cards, and I like attached them to my hip. And I don't know if you also remember the little vial that he had of the blood. I made that out of like um some type of Play-Doh-ish type form and then hardened it, like cooked it in the oven. Like there were just so many different moving parts to the Dr. Facilier costume, and I feel like when I had it on, I had so much. I had heels on too. Like there was just so much going on. And I feel like I was walking slow as a part of like, the role play of it, but I was also walking slow because I had a lot of weight on me with all of the stuff sort of just bogging me down. And then, I had the same long black wig, like contacts done, and the white face paint from that one scene where he's like, singing, "Are you ready?" Like it was just there was a lot into that cosplay, but I loved it. It was just everything that I wanted to happen, and I feel like that's the one costume I had where everything came out correctly. Like nothing was a mess. That was the one time though.
Well, it's one of the ones that I enjoy for many reasons. I'm going to leave it at that. And I also think that this is very much a summer cosplay versus a winter cosplay, a
Oh
fall
yeah.
cosplay, early spring cosplay. It's definitely meant for the summer more than anything else, which is something that I also think is very interesting. And I'm also curious because there's two types of cosplayers out there right now.
Mhm.
There are people who buy a lot of cosplays or buy different pieces of the cosplay and then modify it, and there are people who
Mhm.
make it themselves. And I think you've done a little bit of both, and then obviously with this one you've done bought the jacket then modified the jacket,
Mhm.
and so what is that like, because that's a whole different art, it's a whole different ball game, and it's a whole different way to do something, because you do
Mhm.
it does take skill, you have to understand what you're doing, and then also you're modifying something that's already pre-existing to make sure it fits you properly. So what is that entire thing like?
I feel like for me, I feel like it saves time than doing something completely from scratch. I'm not the world's best sewer. Like I definitely work better with, building the props all from scratch. Like I like making props. I feel like that works for me well, working with my hands and stuff like that. Now sewing and making little alterations on things are my nemesis. I don't really like it that much. I have a friend also who's a really good sewer. So if I'm ever really stuck with something, like I've sewed it maybe twice, three times, it's not really working for me, I'll sort of like pass it off to her and I'll be like, "Can you save it? Can you salvage what I've messed up?" But I feel like for people who are just like, kind of just needing something for a con and you just want to modify it a bit, I feel like there are really easy things you can do. Like if you sew something to a piece that you already have to an undergarment, you can make it a little bit tighter. You can make it more form fitting to you, and it's not even like you had to completely re-sew it, but just sew it to something else you already had. Or if you had for example, like you had some leggings and then they're a little bit too tight to use as leggings anymore, you can literally just switch it, like cut a hole in the crotch area and you can literally switch that to a top. Like there's a lot of little cheats that you can do with stuff that's already pre-made that you wouldn't be able to do if you started from scratch. So I feel like for me, because I've always just been super busy and done cosplay very much like on the side, it sort of became like I don't really have time. This convention's coming up. I also have finals, but I'm going to just like kind of, take a couple hours to do this because I have a couple hours, but I don't have a couple hours every day to make this huge build. So I feel like for everyone, they kind of have to just decide what's best for them. And I frankly have no problems with people completely just purchasing a costume and then wearing it to the convention. It's like whatever you feel good in, that's what you should do. But for me, I always just like to like add my little touch because it feels like I've done something to make it more me if I've added something to it.
Yeah, and I think that's a very big misconception about cosplay, and I think that a lot of damage has been done in the cosplay community where people who go purchase a cosplay, because I purchased a cosplay when I used to go do it years ago, are not viewed the same as people who have made it. And I don't think that's what cosplay was intended to be. I don't really think that's what the entire idea of it was behind. And I think that that's been a very bad thing
Mhm.
where, because the whole point of cosplay, from my understanding, at least on the first level of it, is that you're at a con enjoying the character you're meant to enjoy. Now, when we dive down below, we get into, okay, somebody built this versus somebody bought it, and then there's the skill element to it. But I do think that first level, if somebody just simply goes out and buys a cosplay and is enjoying themselves, like I feel like that's been somewhat, demonized. And I don't really have a problem with anybody as long as, because the whole point of it is to have fun. It's not
Yeah.
to go out and be like, oh, I made the best thing and I'm the best sewer. And so I think that's something that I think people, sort of has gotten very negative in this entire community is that I look at it, hey, if you want to go cosplay a character and you bought a cosplay for $200 off of eBay, and you're enjoying yourself and people like what you look like in it, that's what it should be first and foremost. And
Hmm.
then we can talk about the skill side and things like that. But I think that's something that people forget. And I think it's very intimidating to a lot of people who want to go cosplay is that it's
Yeah.
okay to buy a cosplay and wear it and enjoy it and have a good time as that character at a convention in a relatively safe, accepting environment for you to do that. And so I think that that's a big misconception, and I think that's something that is just has to be proven and stated a lot more.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I feel like it's gotten a little bit better now. I feel like right now it's because with COVID going on, people are just trying to stay afloat with their mental health and stuff like that. So no one's really focusing on making big builds and just coming out with the best cosplay ever. Everyone's sort of just like all of the cosplayers I follow are really now, I feel like getting back to that sense of just cosplaying for fun or just doing little closet cosplays or sort of just putting together different makeup looks that are also, sort of like a cosplay in its own form. And I feel like that's good because we're getting back to what it was when we were all younger. Like, I remember, cosplaying in like 2016 being very different than it was in like 2018. I remember 2018 was like, I think that was, a little bit interesting because I felt like that's when there was a little bit more toxicity in the cosplay community. And I feel like the people who were sort of, starting it, I feel like it just comes from a place of now cosplay being a little bit more, mainstream. And when something becomes a little bit more mainstream, you have a lot of people who kind of just want to, start trouble and tear things down or tear other people down. But I mean, like, literally remember, not it was not too long ago that we were all ostracized and that everyone thought we were weird and everybody thought we were strange. And I'm like, remember that before we start doing it to each other.
So we come from a very different perspective on this, and I'm the first person where I saw this back in 2012.
Hmm.
So I felt that there's been a division, and I think that there's been a massive division. And what I've seen, I've also seen that cons highlight cosplayers
Hmm.
ahead of a lot of other people. I speak to a lot of people on the indie comic scene,
Hmm.
even the mainstream, and we all viewed it as that this started back in 2012, 2014
Mm.
with professional cosplay.
Okay.
And so I feel that because of COVID,
Hmm.
that has become less and it's become watered down where it
Hmm.
still exists, but now I feel like there is more room because I feel that because cons haven't been happening,
Hmm.
everybody's Instagram game has gotten better and everybody's gotten more noticeable and the playing field has become more equal in
Hmm.
many ways, and that con toxicity has vanished. Whether it comes back or not, I don't know. But
Yeah.
going in the last 12 months or so, that has been probably reduced by 50 to 60%
I
of
could
what
agree
I've
with
seen,
that. Yeah.
and that to me is a good thing because I don't think the word professional cosplayer has done much good for people who want to get in. It makes it's a very divisible word.
Hmm.
It's not a very inclusive word. And if we look at certain people, they have not engaged and they have not been good stewards and good
Hmm.
role models. In the indie comic world where I live in, and in the comic world and in the comic book investing world where I'm in, there are good role models. And there are people who have openly said, hey, this is how we do things. And we have called out bad actors on it. And I feel like now that's starting to happen in 2020 has kicked that off and go in 2021. I think it's going to be very similar. But that's
Yeah.
just how I view it. And I'm an outsider looking in. And I'm also looking in from a panelist perspective and somebody who's been to cons and has been doing this for almost 10 years now.
Yeah.
So
I
it's
feel like some
very
of
different.
the I feel like it also matters a little bit geographically because I did a huge switch to different cons when I left Connecticut, you know. Like you go to Connecticut and all that, it's still just very, you know, it's very different. And then I made that switch in 2016 when I came, you know, down for college. When that was when I was figuring out, whoa, this is what big cons are like. This is where a lot of professional cosplayers are. You know, before I'd never even seen anything like that. I was just like, wait, you can make money doing this? Like it was just a hobby of mine. Like I never realized that people monetized it that way until I got here. So I was like kind of just, you know, understanding like, oh, this is interesting. And I mean, you know, just being young and just like putting out, you know, cosplays. Like it wasn't so much. So I didn't even have an Instagram at that time. That's why all of my Instagram posts are only from 2019 to now because I didn't even have an Instagram. People were like, "Oh, where can I follow you?" And I said, "Follow me." I was like, what do you mean? I don't want to really give you my personal Facebook page because I don't really know you yet. But I mean, other than like a little, you know, cosplay group that I had made in like Facebook, like early on, I didn't even have a way to market myself that way. So it was very interesting because it was kind of like I was seen as one of those people, but then people were confused because they're like, wait, then why don't you have, you know, an Instagram following? Why don't you have this? You look like someone who would have all of those things. And so I was caught into a point. I was like, wait, what are you talking about? Like, I didn't even, like, photographers would give me their cards and they would be like expecting me to give them a card back. And I was like, I don't have a card, you know? So it was, yeah, it was very interesting to sort of come into it that way, where I guess I was entering that sort of space without really knowing what I was getting myself into.
Oh, it's so interesting. We come from so different angles. Oh, it's so interesting. But I digress right there because it's such an interesting field, and obviously it's about to change, and it's super
Mm-hmm.
interesting. And we could talk about that in a second, but I do want to talk about one more cosplay
Mm-hmm.
because it's the one that caught my eye, and obviously it's Static Shock.
Oh, yes. I love my static cosplay.
And so a lot of stuff's going on with Static Shock. Obviously, we got that cartoon on WB Kids slash CW. We got Static Shock comics that are
Mm-hmm.
coming out. We got some rumors and some other fun stuff happening in the DC world with Static Shock. And DC is obviously going down a certain direction right now with sort of going to their B characters because they've exhausted their A characters. And I say this not because I think Static Shock is a B character. I just think that they're going on to phase two
Mm-hmm.
versus phase one, especially with HBO Max and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, what was the story behind this one? Because I think this is the one that catches people's eyes.
Mm-hmm. So I actually, um, yeah, fun fact also, when I first did this cosplay, I had a little skater thing that was like circular and I painted it silver. I spray painted it, but it had wheels under it. It was like one of those things. Do you remember in like elementary school where they had you like scoot your butt on like one of those like little wheelie things?
Oh, it's been
It was like
forever.
one of those. I don't know if you used to do that, but it was one of those little wheelie things. And it was one of my worst ideas because it's a circle. It's not like a skateboard. You can't really control it when you're wheeling on it like that. But I would have people like videographers want to be like, okay, I need you to get on this skateboard and like wheel across. And I was like, that is not safe. That it's kind of just for show for me to stand on, you know? Like it's not really safe to do that because it was his trash can top that I was trying to recreate. But yeah, that was a pretty dangerous little side story. I did do it once and I literally almost fell off of it, but like I think like someone caught me, but it was dangerous. But yeah, the reason I actually cosplay Static is because he was like my superhero when I was younger. Like I first got introduced to him with the CW show. So I watched him and I loved the opening and I was just like, look at this superhero. This superhero here looks like me. Like I love this. I want to watch this show. I want to be him. Like I really identified with the character from even before I started cosplay. So then when I started, you know, seeing people doing heroes and it kind of became a thing, like everybody wants to cosplay a superhero. And I was like, well, who's my hero? Who do I want to cosplay? And then I was like, of course, Static. course I want to cosplay Static. Like it was like a no-brainer. And then I always try to cosplay things where I don't have to wear a wig. Because it's really hard to get my hair in a wig. And it's just very annoying. So I'm just like any cosplay I can do that means no wig, I'm 100% there for. So it just really, yeah, I just did the same thing where, I made my gender bend version. I put on a skirt. I had some boots. At first, the first time I did it, I wore sneakers, which my feet were thanking me. But the second time I did it, I had on sparkly heels and shorts and, kind of with the gender benders too, I feel like you can just change it. Like the first time I did it with a skirt and sneakers. The second time I did it with the heels and shorts. Like it doesn't have to stay the exact same cosplay. It could kind of grow with you a little bit. And I feel like that's what a lot of my cosplays have done. They've kind of grown with me a little bit.
And to even talk about this, because obviously Static is now getting a lot of attention. This is how I found you, by the way. I typed in Static, and I'm like, this is cool. Like, because obviously I saw Static growing up on WB Kids slash CW, and obviously I also came into Static later on what Jeff Johns started in the Teen Titans, and it was taken over, and his
Yeah.
role in that. And that's a very different Static Shock, might I add.
Yeah.
Very different, more adult, very, very well done though. And then obviously there's the Static comics that have also come out, and I've read some of that stuff. And obviously Static sort of, Miles Morales is sort of the Black Spider-Man and is a Spider-Man for the next generation. And Static sort of, I don't want to say he was the predecessor, but in many ways he was, I guess, DC trying something out, and also representation, or representation was front and center. And so what is that like for you? Because obviously you're cosplaying, all that, and we're in the same generation, give or take.
Yeah, no, for me, I mean, I feel like every person that I didn't even realize that some people didn't know Static because I was just like, oh, what? Like everybody knows Static. Everybody knows every superhero. And I mean, like, I'm like a DC person. I've never been a huge Marvel fan. Like, I love Marvel, but like, I've always been like a DC person. So I feel like everybody, everybody knew about Static. So it wasn't even a question for me until I realized I'm like, wait, maybe mostly Black people know Static and not everybody else knows Static. Like, it didn't even
It's
hit
also
me.
a generational thing, because if
Yeah.
you were born, 10 years old and you're 10 years old, you don't know who Static Shock is.
And I
And which,
thought it was crazy. I was like, what? I was like, because there's reruns and there's like, because we know older superheroes. We know older superheroes, even if we like weren't really around for them. So I'm like, oh, we didn't hear about them?
a lot of people know John Stewart,
Yeah.
Green Lantern, as the Black Green Lantern. They know more of John Stewart than Static.
Yeah.
Just
So
because
I didn't even
Static is
realize
not.
it was something like more niche. I didn't even realize that because I guess I just surround myself with people, similar age, similar background sometimes. So sometimes I don't even really know when I'm doing something new, but I guess people hadn't seen a lot of Static Shock cosplayers, and they certainly hadn't seen many gender bend ones. So I didn't even realize I was stumbling upon doing something newer when I did it. Like I just thought I was like, oh, I mean, this must have been done a lot of times. But I mean, I saw who did I see? I saw I'm blanking on her Instagram right now, but she did a gender bend Static, and
I know
is
who
it
you're talking about.
Is it Akogia? I don't know if
Yeah,
I'm saying it right.
it's something like starts out with an A and there's a K in there, right? Yeah,
Yeah. She
I,
did a gender bend version and it was beautiful. And I really liked how she did hers, but I kind of wanted to do my own version a little bit. And like, with like my dreads, I wanted to incorporate my natural hair and everything like that. But I just, other than her, I had not seen anybody else really doing it when I had done it. So I just kind of thought, oh, well, maybe I'm just not seeing the pictures. But yeah, it was pretty interesting coming to the con and they're just like, oh my gosh, it's a Static.
Yeah, and let's just talk, because obviously I think that it was very well received, and
Mhm.
obviously some people knew it, and people who know it. I'm 28. I don't know
Yeah,
how old you are, but
I'm
obviously,
23.
so we're relatively in the same generation. Maybe that there's a separation, but I remember watching Static Shock as a kid.
Hmm.
I remember waking up Saturday morning watching Static Shock. I'm like, oh, this is cool. and not,
Right?
not knowing anything about anything, not thinking anything, just be like, oh, it's a superhero. Like, this is great. Like, he's electricity, and he's like sort of in high school balancing his life, and he's hanging out with
Yeah.
his best friend, and they're dealing with shit, right? Like, and that they're coming into becoming superheroes, more or
Hmm.
less. And I forget the city they were in, but obviously they were dealing with stuff like that. So one of the things that, and I don't know how old you were at the time, but I remember watching when I was like every Saturday morning. I was like, oh, Static Shock is on, right?
Yeah.
Right after Batman Beyond. That's how it worked. But anyhow, the whole point is that, so even though some people don't know who it
Hmm.
is, I have a feeling there's enough people at conventions right now, at the very least, who are at least my age, who
Hmm.
know this. And
Yeah.
also, so what was that entire experience like of people saying, "Oh man, it's Static Shock. This is awesome."
Yeah, I felt like it was definitely, it's always different every con you go to. So I feel like your response is basically like where you are, what con you're at is kind of gonna like tell how what type of response you're gonna have. Like I remember doing static at KatsuCon at night, and that was way different than static at KatsuCon, even in the morning, like the same convention. But it's sort of like people have now put on their chill cosplays, they're hanging out, they feel like they're reminiscing more, I guess, because they're kind of just, drinking alcohol and like hanging out with their friends. So I feel like that is where I got probably the most like well received attention, because it was just like, oh my gosh, like I'm all sentimental now, and look at you, you're Static Shock, and you're like over here being yourself, and like that's so cool. And I feel like in the morning there were more so maybe some people who didn't necessarily know who I was, but they wanted to take my picture. They're like, I like this. What is this? And I'm like, oh, I'm Static Shock, and they're just like, okay, already like taking their picture or whatever. So I felt like it was interesting how even at the same con, just AM and PM was like a different crowd, completely different. I think not necessarily a different crowd, but just like a different mindset. Sort of like there's less of the big builds out. There's less of people like taking a lot of pictures and doing a lot of videography shoots, and people are more chill. So they're more in the mindset to be sort of reminiscing and then talking about like their favorite old superheroes.
Yeah, and cons just in general also have different lives. In
Mm-hmm.
the morning, afternoon, evening. I like to handle my business in the morning at a convention personally, when I'm getting stuff signed and graded,
Mm-hmm.
because obviously it's much smoother in the morning than it is in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but obviously I love Static Shock, and that's what caught my eye. And I love Static Shock. I think Static Shock is amazing, and I can't wait to see what DC does with Static Shock, because if they do it the right way, it's going to be really, really, really good. Um, and I'm a pessimistic person, so it means I'm always right, but I digress.
I also feel like a younger audience maybe was confused with like me, Static Shock, and maybe Black Lightning, because Black Lightning had
Yeah.
come out a little revamped, and it was on Netflix, and like people were talking about that, and I was just like, I would love to do like a Black Lightning cosplay. I just don't really have the energy to sort of try to figure out that whole situation,
I
but I
also,
felt like
yeah.
there was a little confusion there too that I didn't really know existed.
Also, I think Black Lightning in many ways takes stuff away from Static Shock. There are
Yeah.
other heroes as well that do it, but they're less known. Again,
Yeah.
they're like the C tier.
Yeah.
And we can talk about the Ravengers. And then I go deep, guys. I go deep. I know my Teen Titans history. I go deep. There's a reason why I have a DC Presents number 26. And I go deep. Anyhow, though, I do want to finish with Static Shock as far as cosplays, because
Mhm.
I think that's the best one to end on. And I know I missed Bishop, and there's a reason why. I am not as familiar with the X-Men, so we're going to just skip Bishop for starters. Um, but I do want to talk about COVID-19, and we did speak
Mhm.
a little bit about this before. Obviously, COVID-19 has pretty much wrecked the last 9 months of the con world. And it's looking like it's going to be at least complicated till the summer of 2021 if we're optimistic, and possibly even more going further down. And so I am curious how you have been affected by COVID, and how your con world has been affected, and even the cosplay world has been affected, because you're on the inside and I'm on the outside.
Yeah. So what I would see from, I feel like a lot of people are kind of missing out on seeing their friends, because I feel like there's a lot of people that I only tend to see during a convention. Like, we don't live in the same area, we're not in like the same, circles, we don't really have the same friends, but all of a sudden we come together at conventions. So basically, um I just feel like a lot of friends I'm missing out on seeing, and that's like my favorite part of conventions. Like, there's some people that I would have seen maybe twice or three times a year because of conventions and traveling and going to that same convention. And now it's just sort of like we're just able to, send messages online and sort of reminisce and be like, oh, I miss going to this con with you, or I miss seeing you at this con. Like, I feel like that is the biggest thing for a lot of us. And especially for a lot of cosplayers where all of their friendships are through cons. I know a lot of people who are in that boat, and right now they feel very isolated because they don't really have that sort of escape where they can just go and dress up and talk to people. And like, that's where they do most of their social interactions. And so I've definitely seen that from the community right now. So that's yeah, I think that's a hard pill to swallow, but that's been hard for, anyone dealing with like isolation, being at home. Um, I graduated in 2019, so I have, no places to go. I work from home. Um, my job started working remotely in um, March, so I've been working, from home every day alone, like basically since the pandemic started. And I see a few people, but it's really not the same. So it's kind of made me not as motivated to do real costumes as well. Like, no one's really motivated to put all of their heart and their soul into a costume they're just gonna wear at home. It's very difficult. So I feel like a lot of what we're seeing is the return of like the closet cosplay, the modified cosplay, a makeup look. I feel like that's what people are doing right now, because a lot of people don't really want to, you know, put the whole thing on just to be at home.
And to even go further, because I definitely think that things are going more virtual. I think
Hmm.
that everybody's Instagram has to step up. And I also think that cons are going to change in general with everything that's going on. And so I'm curious where you see cons going in the future. I mean, I
Hmm.
have friends down in Florida who have gone to smaller cons in the summer and they were more spaced out. Everybody's wearing a
Hmm.
mask. There's really no cosplay because it's more of an indie comic vibe and it's more
Hmm.
of a dealer's market or signatures. And then I spoke to cosplayers who've done New York Comic Con and all they're doing is taking pictures all day with people, and then they're taking pictures of other cosplayers and with other cosplayers and having a great time. And obviously, with COVID
Hmm.
going on, it's an issue of 6 feet apart. It's an issue of you wear a mask. It kind of ruins a cosplay to some degree. I mean, I don't expect Static Shock to wear a mask. You know what I mean? And also, not to mention that, like, if I want to take a picture of you or with you, and I'm a certain character or I'm not, I'm like, oh man, I want to take a picture of Static Shock, and then you're wearing a mask, and then a con tells me I can't do it, and I just paid $80 for a ticket.
Yeah.
Like, there's going to be some issues, and it's going to be a very unpleasant experience. Not to mention, you can't really control that because a con
Yeah.
is chaotic. A definition, it just is. And so, what is your entire take on that? Because I don't know. As a panelist, I don't know what the answer is. I mean,
Yeah.
I know the answer for me as a panelist is that less seats, spaced out more, and
Hmm.
everybody wears a mask. I'll take my mask off because I'm speaking. But I'm going to be so far apart from everybody because I'm going to be up on like a dais, for lack of a better word. And then
Yeah.
after I'm done speaking, I'll put my mask on, and then I'm going to go along with the con. That's how that works for me. Um, but I don't know how it works for cosplayers, and I'm curious
Yeah.
how you view it. If
I'm
you have an
thinking
answer,
right now that cons are just not going to come back until we have herd immunity. Like, I don't think the bigger cons, like at least where I am, I don't see Katsucon coming back. I don't see Magfest coming back. Like, I don't
awesome
see,
con, awesome
yeah,
con.
I don't see any of those cons realistically coming back right now. Like, I don't see a way in which they can make it safe, even if they were to help, like, hold the con. I can't see a way where it would be safe enough for a lot of people to want to go. you know?
And to
So,
further that, because I speak about con economics, I love con
mhm,
economics. So here's the issue with all of this. It's not even safe for you. It's not safe for me. They don't
mhm,
give a fuck about you or me. And
right.
I say this very politely. I have an entire article on my website about this. What this matters about is it matters about the celebrities. The
Hmm.
celebrities have a guarantee.
Yeah.
So that means that every autograph, every photograph they take that they charge for counts against their guarantee.
Hmm.
Unless they choose to do something for somebody or some component. So now what winds up happening is that now if they can't take photos, that means that half of their revenue gets cut in half. And as a
Hmm.
result, that means autographs are going to either go up or they're going to have to sell more autographs, and their guarantee either has to come down or it stays the same. And then therefore, a con is now responsible because if the guarantee is 50 grand and they sell $55,000,
Yeah.
they keep the extra 5,000 and the 50. So the con doesn't pay them anything. If they sell 50 grand, the con doesn't pay them anything. If they sell 49,000, the con pays them $1,000 to meet their
Yeah.
guarantee. And so now, if you have less ways to make money, and then people don't feel safe, those
They're not going to
guarantees
have it. Yeah. It's
are
not
not going
profitable.
to be met, or a con might say, "Hey, look, we know your guarantee is going to be 49,000. We got no problem giving you the extra 1,000 because you're driving traffic, but we're not going to be, giving you an extra, write you a check of 25K to do this." And so that's where this really comes down to, is that it's safe for those people, and then it
Hmm.
has to be somewhat safe for people to do something like take a photo with a celebrity. And then
Yeah.
that's the dictating factor. That's the only factor that matters in behind or in their booth or some component of it, and that's what's going to matter the most. And so therefore that's what it really comes down to. And I get attacked for this, and that's how this sort of all works. And so that's where this is all at. And that's my view on it. And I don't know how you view it, but I think that clearly until that issue is solved, we're not going to have cons as far as cosplayers go. I think you could have an
Yeah.
open flea market con in many ways. Like if Awesome was just a dealer's room, I think that could work. And you have
Probably.
some
Yeah.
panels, that could work. But at the same time, it's also tight space, and it's going to be real hard to tell somebody they can take a picture of somebody else at a con.
Yeah,
And
I mean, they're not going to be able to. They're
yeah,
not going to be able to manage that well. And I just know a lot of people who go to, like, especially cosplayers, they go to cons just to interact with people and to take their pictures and sort of like that life. And also the nightlife. There's a huge party con culture where everyone wants to party together and, mess around in
hey,
circles and go to clubs and, and basically like the con turns into a club after 9:30. And I feel like the same restrictions that go with clubs in real life right now during COVID are going to have to apply to PartyCon. Like we're not having PartyCon in like 2021. It's just not happening. I don't see it happening.
hey, you know what it is? I do panels. I go to the bar afterwards. I grab my drink, maybe two, three, and then I go upstairs and I watch wrestling or more anime, or I read some comic books. I don't do party con. No, thank you. But
Yeah, the
anyhow, so it's
cosplayers are big on PartyCon.
you guys can have PartyCon. It's not for me. I'm totally cool with PartyCon not happening. It's good for me because I'm happy drinking my two Jack and Cokes. Off to the races I go, and boy, am I thrilled, especially after I do 6 hours of lecturing. But anyhow, I digress right there. So clearly, and I don't know if you have any other thoughts on cons and where they're going. And obviously, it's a very sensitive subject
Hmm.
because it affects a lot of people, and for a lot of people, it's their escape. It's
Yeah.
the same thing with wrestling. A lot of people go to weekly wrestling shows, and it's their escape. And I'm a big wrestling fan, and it's a very family oriented thing, more so than cons. So when you're running a show every 2 weeks, those wrestlers, those fans get to know each other, and very much in con life, it's very similar. So I don't know if
Hmm.
you have any thoughts on where it's all going that we haven't mentioned already.
I mean, I just feel like people right now are just finding different ways to cope with cons not coming back for, the immediate time. Like we're not gonna get cons back, so I feel like everybody's sort of got a new hobby. Like I know this cosplayer, like we always like, meet up at cons and stuff, and like she does the majority of her cosplaying at cons. And right now she's become like a booktuber Like, you know, she does book reviews on YouTube now because it's sort of like she needed a new hobby that she was really interested in while she's waiting for cons to come back. Because I know like not every cosplayer loves to cosplay outside of cons. You know, like that's where they like, that's their setting that they like to cosplay. And I know a lot of other people who do like to cosplay, but now they like to cosplay and make like a TikTok video or make like a fashion video or make something like that, you know, with their cosplay. Or I know some people who are like artists and cosplayers, and now they're like they're getting a little bit more into their art. And I found like even with myself, like I haven't been fully cosplaying since like last year BlurredCon, right before, you know, this basically happened. But I've been doing like a little bit of like pole dancing cosplay because now I've really got into pole dancing because I have nothing else to do with my time. So I put a pole in my living room and now I do pole cosplay. You know, like I feel like everybody's just trying to find something to keep themselves sane. So if you find a hobby and you mesh your hobbies together and you just do that, and then when cons come back, I feel like we will all just slowly go back into, you know, what we used to really love about them and what we used to do, and we'll go back and we'll dress together. But I just don't really see that happening, at least until 2022. I just realistically don't see it coming back in the same capacity.
Well, on that note, I do want to give you an opportunity to promote yourself because I know that you have an Instagram. I don't know if you have a Facebook page. I don't know if you have anything else out there. I don't know if you have a TikTok. I don't know if you have, you know, YouTube or merch or anything like that. So,
Yeah, so right now I just have my Instagram. It's Stormborn underscore unlimited. I actually just named it Stormborn underscore unlimited. Before it was Stormborn cosplays, but you know now I've evolved. No, just kidding. But I mean I have like more hobbies that I want to put on there. So now I do like pole cosplay. So I wanted to add that in there at least until I get back to, you know, getting back to cons and stuff like that. So I mean basically just on my page it's just like cosplay looks, some fashion looks, pole dancing, cosplaying, just all of that mixed together. And I feel like now it's been I feel like the most amount of time that I've had to dedicate to sort of like my side hobbies. Like before, you know, I do work full time from home. So, but since it's, you know, COVID, I don't have anywhere to go. So I have more time to create content and stuff like that. And it's been really, you know, I feel like it's been really good for me and really good for like my mental health in general to have something to like sort of pour all of my time and energy into. So, yep.
so I think we're gonna wrap up right there. But I do want to make this clear and state this, and I've been stating it with every single interview, is that you have to support indie. You have to support small time people. You know, you have to support indie cosplayers. You know what they do. You know, if they got merch and they got prints and other things, if they got a coffee, a PayPal. I don't know what else there is. OnlyFans, I guess now.
Yes,
Not.
everybody's on that.
Everybody's on that. You know, it's whatever. You know, be my guest. Everybody, that's great. Patreon's another good one as well. But you have to support, and obviously, if they have things like that, you know, obviously supporting with money is super helpful because that goes a long way. For a lot of stuff, cosplay is not cheap. It can be, but it
Not.
gets very expensive. So definitely consider doing that. But even going beyond that, and I think more importantly, right now times are tough. Things are complicated. Money is tight. Things are very, very scary with where COVID's going. Things are very scary. The economy is not where it was 2 years ago. And so if money's tight, you're taking care of your family, you're taking care of yourself. Please continue to do that first and foremost and put you first. That's something that I'm encouraging everybody. And when you do that, though, social media is free. And Instagram is free, Twitter is free, Facebook is free, YouTube is free. So whatever social media you like, chances are your favorite cosplayer or an indie cosplayer you hear of is on those platforms. So please go check them out, follow them, support them, comment. Legitly go on Instagram and give somebody a heart. It's like 3 seconds, and Instagram is free. And you can do it on your phone, you can do it on your iPad, you can't do it on your computer. I don't think so, unless I'm wrong. But obviously, most people have a phone, most people have an iPad. You can do Twitter on your computer as well, if that's the case. Facebook on your computer, phone, iPad, whatever floats your boat. And there's really no excuse now because that stuff is free and it is super important. So I definitely encourage everybody to go down that route. And money is first and foremost if you got it and you can share it and it goes a long way. But then secondly, social media super helpful. So that's really what I encourage everybody to do and check out. And also, if you're seeing this on Twitch, you're seeing this on YouTube, you can like my Facebook page. It's Pop Anime Comics. It's also live, and there's over 90 of them now on Facebook from season one. So all that stuff is backed up. So if you want to see a bunch of other stuff that I've done, you could also check that out on my Facebook page. It's Pop Anime Comics. Just type it in. It's cool, and legitly that stuff's going to be up there for probably the next 3-4 years. So feel free to check it out. And I also have another one of these coming out later tonight at around 7:05, and we're doing another live interview for those who are watching. So definitely stick around. And yeah, that's all I have, and I'm going to give you the final word.
I mean, I just want to say thank you for having me, and I hope that everybody does go on social media and check everybody out and like, because yeah, that's literally free. And I mean, also we're in COVID times and there's not much else to do, so might as well go support someone. So yes.
And I think that's a wrap.